Give me 90 minutes and this process will have you negotiating like a boss. What we're trying to do is give you a framework, a process that you can use every single time. I'm very proud of this product. This is a culmination of 18 years of being a deal lawyer, working on mergers and acquisitions, real estate contracts, master service agreements, leasing, you name it. This 90-minute video is perfectly curated to give you a process that you can use immediately. You have everything you need to be able to prepare and execute upon a negotiation that will, in no doubt, increase your likelihood of success. This video could give you the advantage that your counterpart doesn't have. What you need is the 90-minute negotiation process. 90 minutes. How to make you negotiate like a boss.
And I'm a transactional lawyer at Steve Bolden. And yes, Mahomes, that is the Patrick Mahomes of Kansas City, the MVP. Yes, so my law partner, Bill Mahomes, that is his nephew. I'm a transactional deal lawyer. We represent public finance entities, your large entities you know here in town, airports and roadways. We also represent investment banks, also do represent real estate companies and mergers and acquisitions, those kinds of things. And in fact, a lot of people are fearful of negotiating. There's a natural tendency for us to be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to sit down with somebody, there's going to be a situation where there's going to be conflict, all those kinds of things. And so let's take negotiation. If you identify the fear, why are you afraid to negotiate? Maybe somebody told you you don't speak well. Or maybe you feel like you can't stand conflict. Or whatever it may be. There might be some things inside of you that someone may have said or whatever it may be that you have to identify if you're trying to get rid of this fear of negotiation. Then what you would do, if you're trying to eliminate this fear of negotiation, you would prepare a strategy to eliminate it. What you might want to do is read a bunch of books. You might want to watch a bunch of videos. You may want to practice similar. You would develop a strategy to sort of manage it, and then you would execute on that strategy.
This is the ultimate 90-minute negotiation process. For many of us, we weren't taught about negotiation in high school or college or law school or business school, if we had the opportunity to go to law school or business school. It's only been since recent times where various schools, and there's still just a few of them, have actually offered a course on negotiation. Most of the time, we just don't have any type of training whatsoever. It wasn't a subject in high school, in college, or even in law school. And even if you decided, okay, you know what, I'm gonna take that course that's offered in law school or in business school, you know, that could cost you anywhere to enroll in a B school or a law school from $40,000 to $250,000. All because you want to try to develop a very specific skill, negotiation. The subject of negotiation is voluminous. There are thousands of books out there. It could take you years to study. But let's face it, you may not have years. You may just have a few days. And so what we're trying to do is help you. This 90-minute video is perfectly curated to give you a process that you can use immediately. And it will give you a framework in which to hopefully calm you and prevent you from being subject to the fight or flight syndrome, causing you to just screw up the deal, lose the contract, cave in, or whatever have you, or possibly even embarrass yourself. You need that process, that confidence that will allow you to negotiate like a boss. Doing nothing is not the answer. Doing nothing is just increasing the likelihood, if this is a negotiation that's gonna happen, that you're gonna be anxious and fearful. And when you become anxious and fearful, you enter into the fight or flight mode. You know, your brain is naturally built to sense fear, danger. And imagine if a lion was outside and it was chasing after you. Your brain would tell you, oh, you need to either run or fight. Well, this same thing happens when you enter into a negotiation and you're anxious and you're fearful. Your mind creates a fight or flight sensation, which may cause you to either act aggressively, to cave in, or to do something terribly embarrassing. What you need is a negotiation process. What you need is the 90-minute negotiation process. I'm very proud of this product. This is a culmination of 18 years of being a deal lawyer, working on mergers and acquisitions, real estate contracts, master service agreements, leasing, leases, you name it. In addition, this is also a culmination of my experiences teaching negotiation, a boot camp at Baylor Law School. It's also a culmination of me and my experience of watching some of the best negotiators around. Finally, it's a culmination of my inner nerd. You know, I've been a debater since high school. I did it in college, in high school, and I'm a deal junkie. And all of this has been compacted and packaged, and these experiences have been put together and curated in such a way that we have the 90-minute negotiation process. 90 minutes, that's all I need. That's all you need. It doesn't matter if you are a CEO of a corporation, or if you're a solo entrepreneur, or you're a lawyer advising your client, or you're a brand new woman-owned, minority-owned business. You're going to need negotiation skills. You're going to need to be able to look at your counterpart on the other side and feel confident that you have a process and you have the preparation that's been put in place that allows you to ensure that you achieve your negotiation goals, objectives, and interests. We've broken down this 90-minute process into 7 modules. Module 1, who are you and what is your negotiation style? Module 2, who is your counterpart and what is their negotiation style? Module 3, what do you want and what are your interests? Module 4, what does your counterpart want and what are their interests? Module 5, preparation, gaining confidence. Module 6, execution. Module 7, closing. And a bonus, negotiation techniques. So give me 90 minutes and this process will have you negotiating like a boss. Module 1, who are you and what is your negotiation style? I want you to right now create a file. I want you to either get a manila folder if you want to do it old school, or get on your computer and create a file, and it's going to be entitled, Who Are You and My Negotiation Style. You can do it on your iPhone, you can do it on whatever kind of phone you have and you want to put it on your notes or whatever, but you need to, number 1, create a file. All right, now I'm not going to try to get all metaphysical and all psychological and everything else like that on you, but ultimately when we're talking about who are you and your negotiation style, we have to start looking internal. You know, your childhood, you know, your how many children you have, birth order, there's all this stuff out here. But ultimately we need to look internal and try to figure out who are we, what are our strengths and weaknesses, and why are we doing this? So what I'm trying to get at is, if you want to improve as a negotiator or just be better or be freaking awesome, you need to know who you are and what kind of negotiator you are in fact, and what is your natural negotiation style. And how you do this is you figure out what are your strengths and weaknesses and figure out internally, who are you? What do you consist of? We need to know our strengths and weaknesses, and we need to be real about it. Why? Because even if we don't acknowledge our own strengths and weaknesses, someone else may be able to pick up on it and be able to pick you apart. And simply because you didn't want to really look inside and try to figure out who you are and what is your natural negotiation style. And just think about this. If you don't know your weaknesses and your counterpart does, it's like them having kryptonite and you're Superman. You will be unable to perform at your best. And so we don't want to have anybody capable of using kryptonite on us and causing us to slip into fight or flight mode and cave in, make a mistake, get upset, get emotional, and ultimately not make a good negotiation decision. So you've got your file, you've got it entitled, Who Am I? My Negotiation Style. And what I want you to do now is write down how you perceive yourself. And I want you to choose between categories like this, 4 different categories. Number 1, are you extroverted or are you introverted? Number 2, are you aggressive or are you passive? Number 3, are you a collaborator or are you a sort of lone wolf, individualistic type of person? Number 4, are you task-oriented or are you more of a creative, free spirit type? Thank you for writing that down and put it in your file. And this is only for you. This is for you to keep. But I would encourage you to take a couple steps further in this analysis. Now, you might find this a little weird or whatever it may be, but I have found this to be helpful. I would highly, highly recommend that you take a personality test. If you haven't taken a test in a long time or ever, you need to do it. If you took a test 5 years ago, you may want to take another personality test because life events may have occurred and has shaped your personality and the way you interact with people, and you may not necessarily be aware of it. Now, granted, a personality test is in many ways sort of you writing down how you perceive yourself, and so it's a reflection of your own thoughts. But within that whole test, it also does indicate a type of personality you may have. It may also shed light on things you may not be aware of. And so it's not, of course, perfect, but it does, in fact, is a reflection of how you perceive yourself. And how you perceive yourself, in many cases, is very much in alignment, or could be in alignment, how you were perceived by others. One free and pretty decent personality test is by the 16personalities.com. Now, after you've taken the test, you may agree or disagree with what you're reading, but it's going to give you strengths and weaknesses that you can look at. But it's likely that what is being shown by this personality test, other people are picking up on it. And ultimately, what I would encourage you to do is read through this test and these results and look at it and say, does it line with what I have already answered above about whether or not I'm introverted or extroverted, or I'm a creative, or whatever it may be? Look at the personality test and compare it to how you perceive yourself. Take note of the similarities and the differences. Third, one more thing I would like you to do. You don't have to do it, but I would encourage you to do so. Look up your horoscope. Yeah, I said it. Your horoscope. And if you want to get really fancy, look up your Chinese horoscope. You don't necessarily have to believe in any of this stuff, but the deal is some people do. And some people will, in fact, look up your horoscope if given that type of information, and try to see if you fit within a certain paradigm or within your particular sign. Or in any case, they may be expecting you or perceiving you in such a way based on your horoscope. And so you need to know that. Each sign has its own characteristics and its own sort of unique qualities. And so examine that. And now that you're armed with a personality test, your horoscope, your Chinese horoscope, your own internal perception of yourself, compare all the notes. And what does it say about you? Is everything in alignment? Are there some similarities between the various tests and horoscopes in how you perceive yourself? Or are there grave differences between them? And you thought I was done with all the self-assessments. One more thing I want you to do. What do you look like physically? What is your sex? Are you male or female? In life, in particular negotiations, there's a preconceived notion that men are viewed more aggressive than women. But that isn't always the case, but there's a perception out there. What is your race? Are you black? Are you white? Are you Latino, Latina? Are you Asian American? There's lots of various different perceptions and preconceived notions with regards to race. And also, it may be some things that you could be internalizing that in some cases are manifested outward. And so you want to take into account that. Your height. Are you tall? Are you short? Are you average height? There's a lot of preconceived notions related to height. Some believe people who are taller are more confident. Some believe that people who are maybe shorter may have Napoleonic complexes and things like that. So we have to take all of this into consideration. It's not saying it's true or not, but we need to examine this. How do you look? Are you blonde hair, blue-eyed? Are you tan? Are you handsome or are you not? Not that it matters, but we need to examine and put this all into our bucket of qualities and characteristics and trying to come up with what is our negotiation style, or better in fact, our natural negotiation style. Your voice. Do you have a booming bass voice? Or do you have a high-pitched, squeaky voice? All of this matters. So taking all of this into account, who the hell are you? No, seriously, who are you? Are you comfortable with all of this? And ultimately, are you comfortable with where we're going next? Negotiation styles. Now, there's tons of books, videos, courses on negotiation styles. And to break it down in its most simplistic form, I'm going with just two styles here that you need to know. Are you cooperative or a collaborator, or are you competitive? And before going in just those two, I'll let you know that the other styles out there that some like to use are competing, accommodating, compromising, collaborating, avoiding. But I think it's easiest and best to break down negotiation styles into two: competitive and collaborative, or cooperative, however you want to call it. Each style can be successful. It's just a matter of if it's natural to you. And each style has its own natural dangers associated with them. A collaborative style is a style where one is trying to work as a team and trying to reach collective goals. It's exhibited by compromising, splitting the baby, bringing parties together. A competitive style, on the other hand, is exhibited in many cases by hardball tactics such as public posturing, table pounding, self-serving descriptions, insults, direct attacks, or just being aggressive. Now let's be real clear here. I want to be real clear with you. Generally speaking, the better style is collaborative and cooperative, without a doubt. That is where most deals are done, and deals that people are happy about and deals that people can, maintain relationships that can last for the next transaction. And if you don't learn anything from this webinar, this 90-minute webinar, learn this. Collaborative, being cooperative is the way to go, if at all possible. Negotiation is not about clobbering the other side and humiliating them, despite what you might see in movies and videos and everything else. That's not really real. And when it does happen, the long-term impact is not generally good. Professor Gerald R. Williams of BYU Law School conducted a study that showed that 65% of all attorneys exhibited a consistently cooperative style of negotiation, whereas only 24% were truly competitive in their orientation and 11% defied categorization using these two labels. 50% were labeled as effective negotiators by their peers, with more than 75% of those coming from cooperative types, and only 12% were competitive. In another study by Neil Rackham and John Carlisle in England, over a 9-year period, observed the behavior of 49 negotiators. The study examined the use of what the researchers called irritators at the negotiation table. Irritators are such things as self-serving descriptions of one's offer, gratuitous insults, and direct attacks on the other side's proposals. These are typically competitive type of tactics. The average negotiator used 10.8 irritators per hour of negotiating time, whereas the more effective negotiator used an average of only 2.3 irritators per hour. Skilled negotiators avoided defend/attack spirals, cycles of emotion-laden comments assigning blame or disclaiming fault. Only 1.9% of skilled negotiators' comments fell into this category, whereas the average negotiator triggered or gave momentum to defend attack spirals with 6.3 of their comments. Both studies concluded that the cooperative style of negotiation is more effective than the competitive style. So just in case you were wondering, it is better to be cooperative or collaborative. So along with knowing whether you are a competitive or collaborative, cooperative style of negotiator, through this process of analyzing who you are, your personality, and hopefully taking the personality test and maybe look at your horoscope and everything else and come up with some type of assessment, you can also try to determine what are your sort of natural personality inclinations. Like, what are you likely to do under certain types of circumstances? There are some of us who are naturally avoiders. We avoid situations when things get tense. Others of us, when in a situation where it's conflict and we have to negotiate or interact with another person, we're quick to compromise. Some of us will quickly be accommodating, and we will quickly try to make someone comfortable to the point where we may give in on certain type of points or tactics. And this is just natural that who we are. Again, some of us are competitive and we're going to immediately try to pound someone into the table or do whatever it is to try to win. And then also, some of us are just a collaborative. So all of these types of personality inclinations, and many of them fit into whether you're competitive or whether you're cooperative or a collaborator, you need to know them, because all of this is within this whole bundle of your natural negotiation style, and also how you may react under pressure. And if you're aware through this whole process of determining who you are, your natural negotiation style, and you know you're someone who may likely be someone who may avoid or be accommodating, overly accommodating, then you need to check that. And you need to be aware that that is something that is part of you, and be able to say, okay, I need to be very careful here, and maybe I need to take a breath or two before making a decision, or let's pause, or whatever it may be, and regroup so that you don't fall prey to some of your natural inclinations. And so if you're extroverted and aggressive, more than likely you could be falling into the competitive type of negotiator. That's where I find myself. And I've figured this out over the years. That's where I'm at, taking these tests and everything else. Well, if you're a natural competitive type of negotiator, you have to be careful that you're not overly aggressive and that you don't in some way turn off your counterpart and cause them to avoid or to not even sit down at the negotiation table with you. You will need to be very careful if you are on the other side, a cooperative, and that you're very susceptible to caving and giving in. You then may need to learn to adapt a little more aggressive tactics at times, or in many cases, to end the negotiation and pick up at a later time when you've had an opportunity to cool off and to rethink and to regroup and be able to focus on what the issues are at hand. Ultimately, you don't want to come off as either a brute who is trying to take over everything, nor as some passive little flower that someone can walk all over. You got to develop a negotiation style that, number one, is natural to you, that commands respect and dignity, and at the same time, you need to give that to your counterpart. Because remember, what we're really trying to do is get a deal done. And we're trying to advance our particular interests so that we can achieve a goal that we can be proud of. The focus should be on the substance of the deal, the interests of the parties, not the individuals themselves. The individuals are just vessels that are attempting to deliver the goods and services to be exchanged and transferred. And in the end, we're trying to get a deal done. Module 2, who are you dealing with and what is their negotiation style? Okay, we already created a file. It's time to create the second file. It could be a physical file, your old-fashioned manila folder. It can be on your computer. It can be on your iPhone in your notes section. We just need to have another file, and we need to entitle it, Who Are We Dealing With and What Is Their Negotiation Style? Now that you have that file, I want you to listen very, very carefully. I want you to do this next thing. It's extremely, extremely important. I want you to Google them. I want you to Google the company or the person who is on the other. I want you to go to their website. I want you to go to their social media sites. I want you to go to Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, whatever's out there on them. I want you to go out there. If it's publicly available on them or their company, I want you to go there and I want you to review it. I want you to print out things or copy things that are relevant into determining who are they and what may be their negotiation style. You want to get as much information that is publicly available as possible so that you can determine who is your counterpart, what is their style, or at a minimum, who do they believe they are, who they want to show themselves as, and what do they believe their negotiation style is. I basically use the exact same process in determining what my negotiation style is or what I have used in determining what theirs is, as much as publicly available again. If it were possible to get hold of their personality test, and it's probably not, I would use it if it was publicly available. On Facebook sometimes people do post their personality test. So if they have a public profile and it's available, then yeah, I mean, it's perfectly all right to get that information. If their birthday is shared publicly, again, I would probably get that information, pull up their horoscope and keep that in the back of my mind. I would try to be able to find if there are any publicly available pictures of them. Are they tall? Are they short? Are there videos out there so you can hear their voice? And Ultimately, what you're trying to do is develop a profile to get an understanding of who is your counterpart on the other side. And if you have enough information to be able to sort of figure out, are they going to be a cooperative type of person or are they going to be competitive? That will behoove you and it be in your best interest to be able to figure that out, or at least be able to have a file put together now that, depending on what you learn over time, will help you develop and figure out their negotiation style. But let's pause right here because, we're getting a lot of information that's publicly available. Let's be real careful. We are not going to be creepy. And if you're creepy, don't get to start doing this stuff. Like, do not create a fake Instagram profile or a Facebook profile and friend the person or follow the person and start getting all creepy and stuff. We're not talking about doing anything like that. We're not talking about, following them or stalking or anything like that. No, absolutely not. We are talking about publicly available information that your counterpart or their company or the company has put out for you to know. And if you don't take advantage of that information, then shame on you because it's publicly available and that's what it's there for. So if you have friends in common through your research, it wouldn't hurt if you feel comfortable. And again, you're not being creepy about it. You can call up, if it's a good friend of yours, you can call up and say, hey, do you know such and such? Tell me about them. Or do you work at such and such company? Can you tell me a little bit about the culture there or anything like that? That's the type of information that will be helpful in analyzing, be able to determine the counterpart's negotiation style. Because ultimately what we're trying to do is prepare ourselves and also to eliminate surprises. Because when we have surprises, things that shock us, it can immediately send us into fight or flight mode. And when we are in fight or flight mode, our brain causes us to do all kinds of things that in many times are not in our best interest with respect to a negotiation.
This fight or flight syndrome is well documented. So imagine a lion. You see a lion in the embassy suites here. Many of you are going to do two things. Hopefully you're going to do two things. You're either going to run or you're going to fight. If you don't do either one of those, you're going to get eaten, right? So you got to do one or two of those different things. Well, that natural sensation that you sense there is the same thing that happens when you're negotiating. When you are encountering someone, your body naturally, your mind senses something that is different, and you naturally slip into a fight or flight syndrome.
If you are fearful or anxious, it may cause you to raise your voice, get temperamental, or shut down, or cave in, become over-accommodating, cower, those kinds of things. And so if you know a little bit more about your counterpart, you're not going to be surprised when they walk in the room and they're 7 foot tall with a baritone voice and they're very commanding. You won't have that shock because you will have already known that. Now, some of you may quit because you're intimidated, but no, we're not going to do that. But so the key is to try to get an assessment and a feel for who is on the other side, or the company, or what their interests are. And just because through your research you find out this person is 6 foot tall, thin, model looking, with a smooth Barry White voice, does that mean the negotiation's over, you've lost? Of course not. Those type of outward perceptions or looks and everything have nothing necessarily to do with how they will perform in a negotiation. But at least it'll get you knowing, okay, this is what the person looks like, what they sound like, and again, it eliminates the possibility of surprise. All of this information in your file, on yourself, and more in this case in particular on your counterpart, is to be filed away, and is an evolving file that will grow with time with each interaction or piece of information you learn. Each piece of information you learn about your counterpart is allowing you to understand who they are and their negotiation style, and assisting you with the ability to hopefully build rapport with them and allow the increased likelihood of achieving negotiation goals. So you will continuously be observing your counterpart and trying to determine where they fit in their negotiation style. But just remember, again, the more successful negotiators, and in general, more people are going to be cooperative and collaborative. So no need to get so worked up on, oh my God, is there going to be a competitive person walking in the room? And even if there is, knowing beforehand, or even when you get into the room, through this process, you'll be able to handle those types of situations. So maintain this file. It's a working file, so to speak, in determining, in this ever-ending process of your negotiation style and also your counterparts. Module 3. What do you want and what are your interests? What do you want? What are your interests? What are you trying to achieve in this negotiation? Why are you trying to go to the negotiation table and try to get a deal done? What is the purpose? Who is your client? Are you an agent working on behalf of a corporation and you're trying to achieve the corporation's goals and objectives? Are you in a supply and logistics company and you're trying to negotiate for raw materials, steel, or some type of material that's going to be used to develop a product? Are you an entrepreneur trying to get a contract with maybe a app developer? All of this matters in determining what it is that you want, what your goals are, and what are your interests. If you work in a company as an agent or a contractor, more than likely the negotiation goal or the interests are going to be coming from the company or your supervisor, not necessarily you developing them yourselves. So you're going to be charged with a negotiation goal or objective or interest to look out for. If you're working as a lawyer on behalf of a client, then your client is going to give you or you're going to work in tandem with your client in developing negotiation goals and interests. If you're an entrepreneur or CEO of a company, in many cases, you in fact are going to develop those negotiation goals, wants, desires, and needs and interests. And at times you may also have to be influenced by or get approval from your board or your shareholders. So remember that handy file I talked about earlier, the 2 files you have now on who you are and who your counterpart is? Well, here's the 3rd file, is determining what are your goals and your interests. So you can either create a new file the old-fashioned way, or you can create a new file on your computer or a new note on your iPhone, or however you want to do it, but we need another file here. I like to also, when it comes to goals, is use a whiteboard and write down the goals there. Or on a chalkboard or whatever it may matter, or a piece of paper. Because studies show when you write down your goals and objectives, it increases the likelihood of success. Now a plug for my book. But in my book, Mastering the Power of Believing, How to Get What You Want at the Negotiation Table in Life, I talk a whole lot about achieving goals and a process in doing so. And I really, really encourage you to write down your goals and objectives.
If you visualize things, like how many of you play golf? How many of you are good at playing golf? Well, if you think back, and I know for myself, I go up and down, but I know when I do well is when I visualize the hole, I visualize the drive, I'm thinking it through and imagining what it's going to feel like, what's going to happen and everything. Studies show this over and over again. When you visualize, use vision boards or whatever, it increases your chances of being successful. So you've got to visualize.
A study conducted by TD Bank shows that many small business owners use visualization, pictures, and idea boards to meet their entrepreneurial goals. In the study, TD Bank surveyed more than 1,100 people and 500 small business owners nationwide to learn about their visualization practices. The survey found that people who imagine their financial business goals are more confident they will achieve them than people who don't. Those who create a vision board or a less formally organized collection of images and photos that relate to their goals are almost twice as confident they'll achieve them than those who don't visualize their goals in some way. 67% of those surveyed believe that pictures of their goals will improve the odds they will achieve them. On writing your goals, in a recent article written by Mary Morrissey of the HuffPost, Morrissey describes a study conducted by Dr. Gail Matthews, a psychology professor at the Dominican University in California. Dr. Matthews studied the art and science of goal setting. She gathered 267 people together, men and women from all over the world and from all walks of life, including entrepreneurs, educators, healthcare professionals, artists, lawyers, and bankers. Dr. Matthews divided the participants into groups according to who wrote down their goals and dreams and those who didn't. She discovered that those who wrote down their goals and dreams on a regular basis achieved those desires at a significantly higher level than those who did not. In fact, she found that you become 42% more likely to achieve your goals and dreams simply by writing them down on a regular basis. With respect to your negotiation goal and objective and interest, what I've learned over time and looking at situations where I was most successful, looking back over those successes, I noticed some commonalities. I usually knew what my goal was and why I wanted to achieve it. I typically had written down the goal and visualized it and put together some kind of plan to get it done. Reflecting on all these experiences, I came out with some type of a truth statement. And that truth statement is this: every time I, 1, visualize a goal, and 2, it's a goal that's beneficial to others and myself, 3, when I write it down, 4, when I formulate a basic strategy to achieve it, but it don't get caught up in all the specifics necessarily, and 5, I accept the journey and process to get there. 6, I achieve it. And so for me, and I think this is helpful for you as a process, is to do these 6 steps. Number 1, visualize whatever the goal it may be that you're trying to achieve, the negotiation goal. So if it's an app that you're trying to obtain, if it's a train that's trying to be built, or there's raw materials that need to be transported, I want you to visualize whatever it may be. A pay increase, visualizing the increase in money. Next is sort of the purpose, how it's beneficial or why it's needed. Are you trying to increase efficiencies? Why are you doing it? How is it beneficial to your company and to your interests, but also to the other person on the other side? What is the purpose? Why?
The whole purpose concept here. So Warren Buffett, he was trying to figure out why he wanted to make a lot of money. And how many of you read Snowball, Warren Buffett's book? It's a great book. It is a great book.
But it's way too long.
It is, yeah. I got you. Well, long books, that's always tough. We don't necessarily want long books. We want things to get to it quickly. But in any event, he says in his book, he saw stockbrokers doing things, making money and everything, and he also did not want to have a boss, somebody telling him what to do. He felt so strongly about that he wanted to have his own company. That's what incentivized him to do and become what is he, second, third, fourth, fifth in the top 5 wealthiest people in the world. And so that was his why, that was his purpose. And so back to your app that you're developing or whatever it may be, you're thinking about why you're doing it, because you want to be competitive or whatever it may be. You gotta know that.
3, write it down. Now, you already should have your chalkboard, your folder out and everything else, but you should be now writing down this whole goal and the rationale behind it. You should talk about the app, if that's the case, or the pay increase. How much is the increase? When does it need to happen? When does the product need to be delivered? What's the long-term projection on revenue? What it will cost to build, or what is the price you're willing to pay? All those types of things need to be written down for the parameters of what you're trying to achieve. And just a tidbit related to if it's something that involves cost. Many times we're trying to figure out, or pay increase, if you will, or whatever. We may come up with a number or a goal, and then we try to figure out, okay, maybe I should increase it by a certain percentage just in case if someone tries to negotiate me down. Well, in cases like that, probably the best approach is to probably either use a range or don't go 30% above or below, or whatever it may be, the cost of their increase or whatever it may be. Because ultimately, if you come out with something that is above 30%, many times your counterpart's not going to take you seriously. They're either going to think you're desperate or they're going to think you're crazy, or both. And we don't want that, because that can damage your reputation. It could damage the ability for you to achieve the negotiation goal, and it's just not a good move. Now, we'll get to the other steps, but let's focus here on the writing it down and trying to figure out, sort of the pricing, the cost, the value, your offer, or what you may perceive as what may be the counter offer. In this process of determining what you want, there are a lot of ways to go about doing it. And one way that you need to be aware of is the BATNA test. The BATNA analysis was created by Roger Fisher and William Ury in their book, Getting to Yes. And they talk about trying to find collaborative solutions and engaging in principled negotiations, and which is something we all want to do. And ultimately, BATNA, it stands for Best Alternative to a Negotiated Agreement. And really what we're getting down to is, what is the best outcome if you decide not to do the deal? So for example, if you decide not to buy the computers because the price is too high or it goes outside your range, your BATNA would be not to buy them at all. But you have to also think about, if you don't get the computers, are you in need of new technology? Is everything going to crash? And are you going to suffer some kind of risk and danger on that end? And so then when you're analyzing your BATNA, you need to think about that as well. Overall, writing all of this down is extremely important to the negotiation process. And you will need to go back to this file of where you're determining and writing down the logic and the reasoning behind why you want what you want and what it is that you want out of the negotiation, because it may evolve over time. Negotiations are journeys. Nothing necessarily happens overnight. It's a process. And so knowing that it's a journey and it's evolving, and keeping these notes and this file in place will help you in the event that you sometimes lose track of why are you at the negotiation table? What are you trying to achieve? Because if it's a process, a journey that lasts a long time, that can occur. And having this process, this file in place, will allow you to go back to it, because guess what? There are some very skilled negotiators and salespersons out there. There are people out there that are charming and able to get you off track in doing all kinds of things with good looks, with good ego-building comments, things that will disarm you, and the next thing you know, you're signing an agreement that you don't really need, and you're not getting or achieving your negotiation goals. And we're trying to avoid that. With this process, that's how you avoid those kinds of situations. And back to this whole idea of a range to develop, as opposed to a bottom line, or just going solely with the BATNA analysis, in many cases is a good way to approach this. For example, if you're attempting to get a salary increase, think about a range of the increase. In Chris Voss's book, Never Split the Difference, he cites a study conducted by Columbia Business School. And this is how the study works. Psychologists found that job applicants who named a range received significantly higher overall salaries than those who offered a number, especially if their range was a bolstering range, in which the lower number in the range was what they actually wanted. So if you offer a range, it's likely that what you offer is the lower part end of it or whatever is what will be your counterpart may try to use. And so make sure whatever's in that range you can live with. And if it's the lower part, just make sure that that probably is your bottom line. But a range is a very good way of coming up with what you want and being able to communicate it. Module 4. What are your counterparts' goals and interests? I believe empathy, the ability to understand and see the viewpoint of your counterpart and actually care, is a very powerful tool in achieving negotiation goals. It's powerful because it's collaborative, and it also causes your counterpart, when they believe you care for them, and in fact you really do care for them, it's disarming, and it allows what could be barriers to be eliminated. When you sense someone authentically cares about you, you automatically care about them. And you immediately think that you are one and together working on a common goal. You think of them more of a colleague, a partner, a brother or a sister. And think about it. If you're going to enter into an arrangement, an agreement, a partnership with someone, that's where you want to be. You want to be in a situation where you believe one another care about each other. You want to be collaborative. You want to view each other as part of a team. I believe the best way to figure out what your counterpart's goals and interests are is to listen. That can be difficult, again, if you're the aggressive, competitive type of person. That's where you have to really train yourself to calm yourself down and calm the aggressiveness down, so that you can listen to find out what is your counterpart's interests. Now use the research that you've done beforehand of trying to determine your counterpart's negotiation style, because through that process of trying to figure out their negotiation style and their personality, you may have picked up on what are their interests. You will also want to pay attention to anything they have written beforehand or any type of communications you've had, and allow that to be formulate and be part of your process to determine what are their interests. And of course, you need to write this down. So back to our whole filing system of putting together either a manila folder or some type of additional file on your computer or in your iPhone, you need to have this particular segment down of what is your counterpart's goal and interests. And in there, you'll be writing down all this information of what you're coming together with through your research and analysis, and you're interacting with your counterpart. So obviously, if you were trying to hire an app developer or negotiate a pay increase or to have a certain type of product delivered, well, you know what you want. But on the other side, what is it that your counterpart wants? Someone who's developing an app wants to sell the app. They may be under certain type of sales quotas. Someone who, when you're asking for a pay increase, what about your employer? Are they in a hiring freeze? Is the market conditions right for pay increases? Are competitors, similar competitors, are they paying more for salaries of their employees? All of these types of things can help you determine what are your counterpart's interests and goals. You can also figure out what your counterpart goals and interests are by asking very good open-ended questions. I like to ask several different questions, and Chris Voss has a very good list of questions that I have used in the past, but it's worth repeating here now. Questions such as, what about this is important to you? Or how can I help to make this better for us? How would you like for me to proceed? What is it that brought you to the negotiation table or into this situation? How can we solve this problem? What's the objective here? What are we trying to achieve? How am I supposed to do that? All of these types of questions will help you determine, based on the response from your counterpart, what is it that your counterpart is trying to achieve? What are their interests? And so let's be careful here, because in many cases, sometimes we get caught up on what people's positions are. And positions are, in many cases, where someone's ego gets involved and we start drawing lines in the sand. What we're trying to do is find out what the broader interests and goals are, that if we can't necessarily meet something very specific, we can achieve the broader goal. And it's very open-ended, and it creates an atmosphere of collaboration. And again, this is a process and a journey. So what you may find out at one point in time may change, and it's evolving. So we have to be flexible in determining our counterparts' goals, needs, and interests. Module 5, preparation, gaining confidence. One of the top reasons why people fear negotiations is because they fear conflict. They have a preconceived notion that when they're entering into a negotiation, it's a us versus them. It's a situation where somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose. There might be pounding on the table. There might be yelling and screaming. This is due in part to reality TV and Hollywood. People fear they're going to get taken advantage of because maybe they don't have confidence in their negotiation skills. All of this fear and this anxiety, it triggers the fight or flight mode. And when this happens, well, heck, you're not going to have a very good chance of being successful if you don't know how to manage that feeling. And let's face it, a lot of this can be fixed with preparation and this process. Preparation and a process are like a security blanket. It gives you a feeling of comfort knowing that, wait a minute, I have a process. I'm not just shooting blindly at this. I have preparation that I've put in place so that I have done everything I can to ensure that I will have an outcome that might lead to success, but certainly not complete failure. You know, I knew in law school, after I had developed a process, that I was going to be in pretty good shape. It was a process, a style of preparation that I would do for every single exam and every single test where it produced a pretty good result. For example, I read all the cases for the class the best I could. I certainly would listen to all the audio tapes on the subject matter if they were available. I would purchase and review all of the flashcards for the particular course. Then I would get a hold of old exams for the class or exams in books or anything else on the subject matter and take those exams under real-time testing situations. That process, that preparation that I put in place was able to remove the anxiety from taking the exam. I knew that I had put in all this preparation, in fact, over preparation, in order to allow myself to have the highest likelihood of success under the time constraints that I was given. So that ultimately, all I had to do was execute. And that's what we want to do for you. And what I learned from that process and that preparation is that even if I made a mistake, or even if I missed a question or two or three, I knew that I gave everything I had, and it gave me a certain type of confidence when I walked into that exam. I knew that I had done everything possible that I could do, that I knew and I was aware of in preparation for that exam. That is exactly the type of preparation we're talking about for a negotiation. It is the exact type of feeling of knowing that you have followed a process, you've put in the time, you've done everything you could with the time given to you so that when it comes time to distributing or negotiating the very deal, the arrangement where you're trying to achieve your negotiation goal and objective, you know that you've put everything into it. And it's a process that works. So as far as preparation is concerned, you're already halfway there. You analyzed who you are, you've analyzed your negotiation style, something that's natural to you. You've done research on your counterpart to determine what their negotiation style may or may not be. You've assessed what your goal and interests are. You've assessed what your counterpart's goal and interests may be. And so now you need to think through how are you going to interact and engage with your counterpart. There's preparation involved with that process. Are you going to send an email, a text, a phone call? Are you going to set up an in-person meeting? In this day and age, there's so many ways to interact with someone. Younger people, however you categorize yourself, many of them prefer not to meet in person and prefer not to talk on the phone. They prefer emails, text messages. And so you may be having to interact with a company with young entrepreneurs who are developing apps and all types of digital products. And in those cases, they may be wanting to communicate via an app, Slack, or text, or whatever it may be. So you need to prepare for that. Older people may prefer the phone or may prefer in-person meetings and are discouraged or turned off by the use of various types of technology because in some way it's impersonal. You have to keep all of this in mind when you're developing and preparing your strategy for how you're going to encounter or engage with your counterpart, no matter what. We want to keep this collaborative, cooperative. And so no matter the communication medium that is used, keep this in mind. We want to be collaborative, cooperative, and we're trying to achieve our negotiation interests. So your initial communications or your communications throughout, you need to take in particular consideration your tone that is being used at all times. Make sure that you're not coming off overly aggressive. Make sure you're not coming off overly passive as well. I encourage you to think thoroughly and carefully about each communication before you send it out. Proofread your texts. Proofread your emails. Write a script before making that phone call, or write down what it is you're trying to achieve with respect to that one particular communication. If it's a text or an email, after it's prepared, walk away from it and then come back to it. Take some time and read over it again. If you're using a cell phone, I would encourage you, instead of just typing that message into the actual email or a text message, that possibly you want to type it into like a note feature on an iPhone and just type in the notes and edit it there. And then once it's ready, then put it into the email. And at the very end, insert the email addresses or the phone number for the text. Why do I say that? Because you don't want to inadvertently send something out by accident. Those addresses need to be inserted at the very end. And also, you need to think through who exactly who needs to see this. You need to be very strategic, and when you send something out, that it is in fact going to the parties who need to know. Or if you want to send it to some additional folks, why do you need to do that and what impact it has? Hopefully it increases the likelihood of success. That would be the only reason why you would include other people in the communication. Because all it takes is one accidental email or text message or post that should not have gone out that can completely, number one, endanger the transaction, but it could actually kill the transaction and embarrass you and ruin your reputation. In this process of preparation, you're doing ongoing research. Things can change on this journey of a negotiation and of trying to achieve a negotiation goal. I would sporadically, from time to time, do additional Google research. It could be, as far as a salary increase is concerned, a wave of salary increases may have just occurred in the marketplace. And knowing that could assist you in gaining leverage on what you're asking for. Or you might find out something about your counterpart, where something really great has happened or something really bad has happened. And it may be a situation where it makes sense for you to walk away from the deal, or it may increase the likelihood that a deal will get done. This ongoing research, tapping into market trends, your counterpart, and what they may or may not be doing is ongoing, and you need to stay on top of it, because this type of information is readily available. If you don't pay attention, it could be you that suffers a loss. In 2008, when there was a huge market crash, there were several investment banks that were involved with transactions. And in some cases, one or two of those banks went out of business. If one had not been paying attention to what was going on in the marketplace, someone who was engaged in a transaction or had a deal that was underwritten by them, they could get surprised. And there were advantages and disadvantages to knowing what was going on. And so that's why it's so important to pay attention to what is going on around you, to do updated research, and to stay on top of the news and current events and market trends. All of that is part of the preparation process. Module 6, Execution, the distribution stage.
And as you would execute and try this over and over and over again, in the process of executing a strategy, you forget about your fear because you're executing. You're actually going and working towards something. And so that's what you have to do to deal with the fear of negotiation and fear in general.
When you get to the part where you're talking about distributing the pie or making requests, proposals, and counter proposals, you are in the execution distribution stage. And this is the stage where things may happen rapidly. There are a number of different approaches on the execution stage. And one of the main things is pay attention to what has happened beforehand. Remember our research on who you are, your negotiation style. Also research on what is your counterpart's negotiation style. What are your wants? What are their wants? The preparation you've put into this. All of this information now has given you information that you know that can be utilized in determining where and what you need to do to achieve your negotiation goal. You may have already sent out an email and received an email or made a phone call. And so in those initial stages of interaction in the execution stage, you're building rapport with your counterpart. What I mean by building rapport is when you're interacting with them, you're understanding what their likes and interests are, and you're sort of mimicking them so that, again, you're getting into a collaborative type of space as opposed to competitive. There are a number of different ways that you can handle this execution stage. You may want to list out key points that you think need to be resolved. And you may want to categorize those points in what are most important and what are least important. That is one way to sort of divvy up the pie and create a world or a universe of what is at stake, or what is it that you need to achieve. Most important in this stage, you need to have principled reasons why something should be this or that. And we would have already made those determinations early on in our process of determining why you need something, what's the rationale behind it, what is the benefit to you, and then also trying to think on the reverse side, what about your counterpart? How does it benefit them or not benefit them? Where's the mutuality between all of it? But when you are making an argument for a particular position, an increase, a concession, you want to give principled reasons why that interest, that need should be met. And again, if you're one that is an accommodating type of personality or more passive, be careful about the concessions you make. It's likely that a concession will be made during this stage, but don't make it so quickly, because a quick concession could, in some ways, signal a weakness on your part. And we don't want to signal a weakness when in fact one does not exist, or if one does exist, we don't want it to become quite apparent. And during this execution stage, many times your counterpart or yourself may be deploying various types of tactics that negotiators may use. During this execution stage, again, all types of tactics can be used. Threats, maybe a plea that they're going to walk away from the deal if it gets to that kind of stage. Techniques such as silence. Silence can be a very powerful tool in a negotiation, especially when you're trying to divvy up the pie. When one side has made an offer or counter proposal and there's not an immediate response, sometimes it can cause your counterpart to start communicating further things and to basically negotiate against themselves. So a variety of techniques can be used and are used during the execution part of this. But again, remember, what we're trying to do is keep focused on our negotiation goals and objectives of what we're trying to achieve. If during this execution stage the process is drawn out, it may be helpful to go back to why are you at this negotiation, going back to your files that we've created so that you can remind yourself, so that you don't cave in and do something foolish in the midst of this long, which could be a long process. One negotiation tactic is to draw things out, is to cause your counterpart to become so tired and weary under the process of the negotiation that they cave in, they give in, or you might cave in and give in. So you got to be very much cognizant and aware of that type of strategy or that type of tactic during this process. But ultimately, again, what we're trying to do through this whole 90-minute process that we're talking about is allowing you to know a procedure and a process to utilize each time, so that when you get to each stage, and especially in this execution stage, you know why you were there. You know that you want to have a principled negotiation, and you know also that you need to stay calm and deliberative throughout the entire process. And you need to also be very, very cognizant, aware of this fight or flight syndrome. Anytime you start beginning to feel anxious or extreme amounts of fear, that might be a time where you should decide, hey, why don't we take a break? Or maybe don't just respond immediately to that text or email that you received with a counter proposal. If it raises the blood pressure up and everything, this is the time to take those deep breaths. This is the time to walk away for a moment and take a long walk in a park, or to go swimming, or do something completely separate from, or completely different from this whole negotiation, so that you can clear your mind, and then when it's time and you're comfortable, then you can make a decision or a choice. And so again, we're trying to avoid any type of situation where you start shooting from the hip, or you make emotional decisions and not focused on the principled negotiation and the objectives and interests that you're trying to achieve. Final module, the closing stage. At some point, hopefully sooner rather than later, it is time to pop those bottles. It is time to sign that agreement. It is time to come together and celebrate what you have achieved. But let's not get too crazy about all of this. The closing stage is a very, very important stage of the negotiation process, because it is the end, yet the beginning of the next stage. Because now you have that product. Now you're performing that service. Now you have that pay increase. Have you, during this process, done anything that will make it difficult to move forward? And that's why we have this process in place. We're trying to make sure that we don't do anything during our preparation and during this process that causes us to have a bad deal or enter into a bad arrangement. Because if you may have won and achieved a small negotiation goal at this part of the juncture, but in the long term, if you suffered from fight or flight and became abusive and overly aggressive and over leveraged and won that aspect of the negotiation, it may be down the road that your counterpart, or someone who knows your counterpart, who knows what happened, may at some point retaliate. And we're trying to avoid that. Again, we're trying to develop and get to a principled compromise or agreement among parties that everybody can live with, that everybody can walk away from and be proud about. Not feel abused, humiliated, or anything like that. So the closing stage is extremely important. It's extremely important to be communicating with your counterpart in such a way of, I'm really glad we're able to do this together, and we can look forward to the future together. It needs to be those types of statements that are very futuristic and very positive, looking into the mutual beneficial nature of the arrangement that was entered into. That you need to have those type of communications occurring in the closing stage. A closing dinner would be nice if it's not inappropriate. Maybe sending a nice card afterwards, or sending flowers, or whatever it may be. whatever your thing is, sending champagne or sending chocolate or whatever, you need to do something to put a little bow on the fact that you have done something pretty incredible. You've entered into an agreement. You got a deal done. And that's something to be celebrated. And you also have a new partner, a new collaborator, a new person who has accomplished this thing we call negotiation with you, and you have achieved the negotiation goal. But one more thing on this closing stage, as you're celebrating and congratulating one another, make sure everybody understands that it is in fact over. In a lot of these agreements, there are covenants and other type of promises that may need to be adhered to, and other type of obligations down the road. Let's all make sure we know that this stage of the negotiation is over. And also we need to keep track of those type of continuing type of covenants and obligations that we may have to adhere to after the closing stage. A few tactics to be aware of while you're going through this whole negotiation process. Bullying. Be aware that at times bullying may occur in this negotiation process. Bullying is threats, humiliating, ridiculing, things like that. When someone bullies you or you're bullying someone, you in fact are trying to get a response, or someone's trying to get a response from you. It's real important when you're getting bullied that you don't bully back. Or if you do bully back, be very good at it. Because the worst thing that can happen when bullying occurs is that it becomes a bullying contest and the biggest bully wins, but at the end of the day, nobody wins. One of the best approaches to when someone is using a bullying tactic is to ignore it, or then to point everybody back to the issue at hand. One response would be, okay, I know you have just done something offensive or it appears to be bullying. I want you to know that I'm not going to be responding back and forth on those type of tactics. What we're here to do today is to focus on this aspect of the negotiation, and that's what we're going to do today. When you do things like that, that sets the tone. And let's be real careful about that as well. Make sure your tone is nice and soft and gentle in those and when you're dealing with bullies, because you don't want to cause an escalation in things when you're dealing with a bully. Flattery. Flattery is a very, very powerful tactic, and we need to be very careful about it because it's disarming. Everybody likes to hear positive things about themselves, but be careful because some of the best flatterers in the world know exactly what they're doing. They're disarming you, they're boosting up your ego, and they're getting you to a point where you might agree to something you normally would not agree to. When someone is being overly flattering, you may want to say thank you very much, but let's stick to the topic at hand. When you do that, the flatterer knows, okay, let's stick to the topic at hand. Let me stop it. They're on to me. So that's one way to deal with flattery. Reciprocity. Reciprocity is when someone makes a concession, or it could be a big concession or a small concession, but really they're doing it in expectation for you to give something back. If you are the one trying to utilize reciprocity. Just be careful that you may not get something back in return. And if someone is giving something to you, it may be they're trying to use the tactic of reciprocity. A, be in a situation where you may have something to give back, or B, on the other side of it, just know that that's what they're trying to do, and maybe you're not going to be reciprocal. But know that reciprocity is a tactic to build goodwill, and generally is used for good, but is also used strategically to get you to concede to something that someone else may want you to concede to. Just be aware of that. Transparency. Make sure when someone's using transparency that they in fact are being transparent and they're not just revealing something that is very obvious. The tactic of using transparency is to get you to reveal something that you may not otherwise want to reveal. And so transparency is, again, something that's disarming. It builds goodwill, but at the same time, it can be used as a tactic to get you to disclose something you normally would not disclose. So be aware of the tactic of transparency. There are hundreds of types of techniques that one can use and deploy in a negotiation. And going into detail on all of those is beyond the scope of this 90-minute video on the negotiation process. But you have everything you need now to be able to prepare and execute upon a negotiation that will, in no doubt, in my mind, increase your likelihood of success. I want to hear about how this video has benefited you or how it can be improved. I want to hear about your successes. I want to hear about how you have gained confidence in this thing we call negotiation. I want you to be a great negotiator, and I want you to be your very, very best. And I want you to be able to have done it all in due in part, or some in part, to this webinar on 90 minutes, how to make you negotiate like a boss. Thank you. I have had my share of successes. I have had my share of failures. Moments of great confidence and courage. I've had my moments of insecurity and doubt. What I have learned through these experiences, no matter what, you have to believe. You have to believe in yourself, you have to believe in your goals, and you have to believe in your success. Whether it be in a boardroom, car lot, or the mall, throughout your everyday walk in life, you have to believe. Inside of you, there is this yearning for you to be who you are supposed to be. You have seen hints of it. Some others have too. I want you to be able to look back and see that moment when you made that move to get the most out of life. Let's take a step closer in achieving your goals. You are strong. You are able. You're a boss.